Okay, guys, cool. So, who understands what was Daniel talking about? Hands up. Okay, that's a lot. Daniel, come here. I will have a few questions for you. We'll jump into the Q&A. Does someone have a question from the audience before we start reading the slide? Okay, so I will start with one. You basically show us pretty advanced prototype. And I want to ask the audience, how many of you ever built some kind of these advanced prototypes in Figma? Hands up. Okay, that's a lot. That's like more than I thought. You were talking about the concept that you basically was like trying to solve or show to your friend. But how often do you build these kind of things in Mews in your day-to-day job?
I would say this is the third prototype of this type. This is the most extensive regarding the use of variable conditions, further iterations of it. I think this is one of the largest ones, but it's the third one that I have worked at this level with at Mews.
Cool. And do you remember how long it basically took to prepare this?
Like a month.
Month.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a lot.
Yeah. It was like a month. But what was interesting about this is that I was working on this as I mentioned, I was working on a tipping flow, which wasn't self-served. So it was still managed by a waiter, and we were working on that. That was going into the delivery. And then on the side, we were working on this. So it wasn't full-time, just focused on this.
Okay.
Hi, great presentation. I have following question. Do this advanced prototype for testing, or it's for developers that you can show them how should it work, or it's for user testing? So yeah, that's the question.
For me, was a little bit of both. In this case, I was able to go to this person and get firsthand feedback, and it worked because I didn't have to moderate or explain anything. And for developers, it really, in my experience, has worked well because not in this particular case, because this didn't get built or hasn't, but it has worked because it really forces you to think about the details, you could ask questions as into how are you getting this data, what type of data are you getting, and what can I do with this data? So you're really thinking about the micro interactions and behaviors. For example, on the drag and drop example, I'm able to talk with developers into what the D&D kit library allows us to do. So when we're in a conversation on different states and defining different states, for me is really we're speaking the same language as far as what we can do and the possibilities. So I think it's a win-win. Thank you.
You showed us basically both words. The second one was the prototype in Figma. The first one, the V0, if I'm correct, was basically like a AI chatbot that builds a real prototype in code for you. And there's like very good question from Micha. Is that like today as a designers, I think they was asked after the first presentation, after your presentation, today we build prototypes. What with the rise of AI tools, will the modern designer be the one who ships final solutions? What do you think? Because even that you show us the V0 prototype, it was quite clunky. It wasn't like production ready thing, right? Do you think that we in some like near future will move from this to like shipping production ready code?
I think there's a lot of people doing it better than what I showed. I think that there's Lovable. That's another product built by designers that do somewhat something like this. I think Cursor can do better. Then you got like this new Figma MCPs connections that allowed you to really get closer to the real thing, to developing code ready products or designs. I also saw someone that did it, a designer that did it, but since they didn't know code, they didn't know how to troubleshoot. So it really went south for him because he didn't know certain errors, or when people were trying to actually more maybe towards the topic of security, you don't really know how to handle that as a designer, because at the end it is code, and AI can get you so far. But I personally, I think that you do need to know certain code skills, and engineers are highly relevant, and they bring something to the table that AI cannot just replace just like that. I think how I see it is that depending on what you're building, if you're building something fairly, imagine you're building, I don't know, like a video editor with a timeline. So I think that that could be built by a designer using some sort of AI, maybe cursor. You'll have to get in the weeds of the code. But if you're going more extensive, I don't know, a banking app, I doubt that I could build this way. So yeah, I think that it's more for getting closer, design and engineering closer to speaking the same language, and just being able to test things that are more closer to the medium. Kind of like if you were designing for print, and when you design for print, you would need to go to the print shop and kind of like color correct with the guy printing, and you would need to get into the weeds of printing, but you were not running the print shop, but you know what you needed to do. I think it's the same. It's kind of the same. You're just getting closer to the final medium, because Figma is just a design tool.
In the first talk, you basically show us how you or we can use prototypes to basically tell some story, to speak with some stakeholders that aren't designers. Do you personally think that the time invested in the prototypes, because the presentation are quite easy, there are AI tools that can like ship up presentation in seconds today with like notes. We don't have anything for the prototypes, so we need to basically build it as you showed us. Do you think that the time is like very well spent on the prototypes on like every topic that we want to basically showcase to stakeholders, or do you prefer only to basically invest the time in like large product features or like large docs with stakeholders?
I think it depends on the level of the importance on what you're going to present. Like, that's why I define that sort of order: first, great solutions, then polished craft, and then sufficient prototype. If you believe to deliver a message, you don't need a prototype, don't do it. But a prototype is a good way, interactive way for them to see. And also, for example, with Daniel as an example, it's a mobile, can get even the phone, show, and they can get excitement with seeing things work. Talking with stakeholders, we need to avoid using the design language all the time, the language that we use within each other, because they don't understand. So, but they understand when you show something to them and they get excited about it. So I think this is what I believe with the prototypes.
Okay, I'll like quick info. I know that like most of you like understand this or know this, but the things that the guys show in the Figma slides are basically live prototypes. It isn't any video or like GIF on repeating. It is live prototype that you can basically click. So like even if you are not as a designer the presenter, for example, some customer success manager or someone from a business team is the presenter, you can put your prototype inside their presentation and basically let them click and play on the meeting. So it's like only important things to basically tell that this is actually like the good use of Figma slides and not use PowerPoint on or Google Slides. There's a good question on both of you. Do you have some debugging process for prototypes if you are using variables? Because both of you are using variables, or like you need to use variables to basically develop prototypes. You can have a lot of bugs in there, from like a small thing as rename of the layers correctly, or like a big thing of calculation something. Do you have some debugging process how to basically fix that? Daniel, we can start with you.
That's when I think this component switchboard idea it's handy, because it allows you to focus on the details. So you just zoom into this component, you see, and try to understand how this component behaves or should behave. And then on the side, you're just creating this board where you test the thing. So at that point, you're not building anything. Like, you're not touching the flow, the prototype. Anyone can go into Figma. The flow is intact, but behind it, you're actually troubleshooting all of this behavior. So if you have a math equation that is not working correctly, if you have, I don't know, in this case, what we saw, you were adding, instead of 1 by 1, you're adding 2 by 2, you would be able to see that on the switchboard. So once you're testing your component, you would see it on the component level without messing up anything else. So that's how I do it in this case.
Okay, so you basically, you take the big thing, you split it up into small things, and then test in each individual thing separately, and then combine them to something bigger,
Exactly.
right? Okay,
Exactly.
cool.
Similar process in my case, like always test. That's why, like I mentioned also, like after you animate, before going to the component level, like test, test, and test. But also there's a moment that you have to give up, like one of the prototypes I present, there is like a big error of animation there. I said, yes, I would spend a little, at least 1 hour to fix it. I'm not gonna do it, because to show that's also imperfect things is good to be presented. If you have a good storytelling, it's what matters. So in this case, see what is sufficient and what is enough, to not spend a lot of time, because we know, like, working in tech companies and doing this kind of polished work, it's actually hard. It's really hard to find the time to that.
Have you guys thought about if you get to the point where you want to kind of like give up, because of course it can happen, and we know like we can get there like easily to some ceiling. Would you like think about sharing it to maybe someone outside to maybe fix the file, to maybe solve the issue, because Figma is collaborative, right? I understand that in Mews like you have you can share it, you cannot share everything, but maybe I don't know, there is some extent, or have you thought about it?
I would share it, Daniel. That's it. But like, what do we have, like, that's NDA, like it's complicated, it's actually hard. But we have, even though we work a lot in Mews, like we have a very fast-paced environment, we try to help each other. So for example, we have references, people that are very good at research, people that are very good at prototyping. So it's actually relying on those people internally. It's even better than actually calling external help.
Cool. Daniel, there are a question from Tomasz on you about the V0 versus Figma. What are the use cases that you will basically build it in V0, and what you will build in Figma as prototype? Do you have some like guides that, for example, if there are complex interaction as drag and drop, I will use V0, or if there are some like libraries from dev, I will use V0. Otherwise, I will use Figma prototypes, or how does like the thinking about the tech stack works?
That's a good question. For me, it's a combination. I think I'm quite stubborn. I spend a lot of nights just on the computer, so I want to know how things work. But when with working with engineers, I know that some engineers they just say no, no, no until you get a yes. So I want to know how it works. So when they tell me no, I can then share the thing and say, hey, like, there's this thing that does allow me to create that. Why are you? So just to facilitate the conversation, that's one aspect. The second aspect is depending on what's the intention. So if I'm gonna test this with a user, I know that Figma prototypes to get quality insights, I doubt that Figma is the right tool. I think Figma is more like a sketchpad. And if you're going to build a prototype that's complex, that you need to gather a lot of data or insights from, it's quite prone to error. And if it's prone to error, you're going to get insights with errors. So you need to be able to have prototypes that can work as if it was, or the closest as to the final medium. So that's when I would go with V0, Cursor, or any of these other tools. It's depending on the purpose of what I'm working on. So of course, I work on a lot of things that don't go through user testing, that just stay as Figma static designs.
Got it. So you're basically very popular with the dev team, right?
Yeah, I get along quite well.
Yeah. You both are using a lot of components in the prototypes, but you are like messing it up. You show us detach instance. Actually, the first merge that I received from Figma years ago was a sticker where it's like detach instance, no thanks, right? So basically, and the question is, if you are using these components, are you building them on top of your design systems? And basically, how hard is to keep them up to date with the design system? Or is it even the case? Or are you building the prototype only like for a specific time, and then like if the components change, like, yeah, that's it?
It's a good question. So to scale that idea presented like a library with prototypes, actually it requires us to find a way to use the component from the library of the design system without detaching, but actually creating a sort of a variant from it. in our cases, I think Daniel also, it's we create for a specific moment. This idea that I shared is something that I'm trying to introduce also, because I really see that we can speed up like having a library of prototypes. But definitely is a challenge to coexist if you detect the component, because you want a specific interaction you have to do with the design system. So we need to find a way to coexist.
Do you agree? Okay,
Definitely.
cool. We have some more questions, but basically we will jump into two, then Kahoot, and then because I want to like give you some time to chat and eat the food that we have here and drink some drinks. So you can basically talk there. The first question is about the coding tools. If there is like anything else besides the V0, we basically mentioned Cursor, we mentioned Lovable. Maybe do you have experience with something else that you want to mention?
I think so far it's been Cursor, V0, Lovable, Airsbit, Bolt, and Build.io, and this whole thing with MCPs, Figma MCPs, with Cursor. I think Cursor, Claude is really really nice. So a lot of the stuff I found troublesome on V0, I would take it to Claude, and then kind of get both of them to fight. And say, hey, why you are telling me this? No, it's this way, and then that would solve the issue.
So AI loves you too. Same with the dev. Okay, cool, guys. And last question on both of you. What feature do you currently missing in prototyping in Figma? What will be the best things that help you to tell better stories and to try better use cases?
Timeline. Please, Figma, do it. I see that they're investing like in prototyping lately, but also investing in other fronts like handoff with developers, now presentation. I do see some improvements in the Smart Animate, but it still needs some improvement, and I think timeline would like be a heaven.
Yeah, I think from my side, just this whole writing conditions, like first setting up variables. I should be able to set up variables from a CSV, just another way, or just plugging it into somewhere else.
You can use plugins for that.
Yeah, the plugins. Yeah, but I would expect like that's a lot of work. I would, but yeah. And then writing conditions. Conditions should be easier to write. I think. I just feel like creating like full interactive prototypes it takes a lot of work at the moment with Figma. Now looking at AI is just you start questioning like if I want to add stuff on Figma, should I really go to the trouble of writing this condition, or should I ask V0 to just do this for me? So that's where I see Figma would be nice to see some improvement.
Okay, thank you. Please big applause for these like two lovely gentlemen with amazing presentations.